Hello there. So today let's talk about where is the best place in your garden to plant Edgeworthia chrysantha. So a viewer had this question, and if you clicked on this video, you may have the same question. So I would like to be able to help both of you. First, we'll give you an overview of what this plant looks like in this garden right now. Next, we'll talk about the growing zones for this plant. Then we'll talk about where is the best place to plant this plant in your garden. Finally, I will give you some gardening pearls and a recap of this plant. So hopefully this video will be helpful for you. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, it's early morning, close to 9 a.m. and this is what this plant looks like right now. You'll see that there are some yellow foliage, and that is to be expected as we are approaching fall. Eventually the leaves will turn yellow and fall off, leaving buds remaining. So if I look, you can see there are some buds forming already, and these buds will continue to get bigger and bigger, and finally sometime in winter, I would say in our garden here, you will see lots of blooms in February. This plant is in the woodland area, and it's at the outer border of the canopy of the trees. So this plant does get some morning light starting around 10 o'clock. And sometime in the afternoon, it does get some sunlight again, but it is coming from the direction of where the camera is pointing. Now I will say, I do not know exactly how much sun that this plant gets in the afternoon, but I would assume it would get intense sunlight maybe for 1 to 2 hours. So if you love this plant, you gotta know what growing zone you are. So this plant growing zones are 7 to 10. So that means if you live in any of those growing zones, 7, 8, 9, or 10, you can grow this plant well. However, for example, if you live in growing zone 6, it will need some winter protection. It means you either have to plant it in a more protected spot, or you will have to bring it in for winter. If you research, it will say the best place or the best environment for your Edgeworthia would be some place that will get partial shade or partial sun. What that means is it needs to have some kind of afternoon protection from the direct sunlight. Now, if you live in where I live, where we get intense afternoon sun, basically whenever the sun is out, in say starting at 10 o'clock, we really get intense sunlight in the summer. So it does need that afternoon protection from direct sunlight. As far as the soil goes, it likes rich, moist, well-draining soil. So if you have a spot in your garden that gets dapple sun or dapple shade, rich, moist, well-draining soil, that would be the ideal location for it. With what that has been mentioned, let's see if this Edgeworthia is getting the ideal growing conditions. First of all, with the sun exposure, that is a check mark. It is getting that. It does get well-draining soil, so that's a check mark. As far as the soil being moist, it does not get a check mark. The reason is because it is competing with the tree roots around this general area. So the soil tends to stay a lot more drier. And to compound that, I hardly come over here to water this plant. It is in the woodland area, and I don't get over here as often as I should. So these plants, not only this, but other plants that are around here, they don't get the water that they should. The water that they are getting, including this plant, is from the rain that we get here. And fortunately, this season we have been getting a lot of rain. So thank goodness for that. To help with retaining a lot of the moisture, I have laid a layer of mulch here. So that's something that you could do to help your situation if you don't have a lot of moisture there. To also help, you can also plant ground covers, which I am trying to do. It just takes them a little bit longer to get established. So in the meantime, we have mulch over here, and that does help to retain the moisture. Now let's talk about whether this plant is getting that rich organic soil. It does not get a check mark for that either. The reason is because I have not amended the soil. It is competing with the trees. So because of that, the soil, I would say, is not very fertile at all. Not a lot of nutrients, not a lot of like rich organic matter. So now I would like to give you some gardening pearls on this Edgeworthia Chrysantha, just based on my experience with this plant for the past 4 to 5 years now. So the first gardening pearl is this. You just heard me mention that this plant is not getting the ideal environment that it needs. However, as you can see, it is looking beautiful. So what that means is this plant can be adapted to its environment once it is established. Now, that could be anywhere from 6 months to a year. It just depends on your garden, it depends on your skill level, it depends on your experience with gardening and all that. So I will leave it up to you, but once it is established, like this plant is, it can be adapted to the environment that it's in. So you know that this plant has tree root competition. It tends to be on the drier side. It doesn't get the water, supplemental water from me as often as it should. It only gets water from the sky. The soil is not as fertile as it would like, but as you can see, it is not doing bad at all. Like last year, I think last year was the first year that it was transplanted here, and there were so many blooms. So this year it's going to get even more blooms, and they are going to look beautiful, if not more beautiful. And as you saw earlier, there are buds coming up already, and the buds will just get bigger and bigger. You will also notice, if you didn't already, that the leaves on top are smaller than the leaves on the bottom here with the suckers. Now, the leaves on the suckers are the ones that I had been used to seeing when this plant was in the front. Now, again, the sucker leaves are the leaves that I had been used to, not these smaller leaves. So, two things that could be going on. One is that the suckers could be stealing nutrients from these top foliage, or two, they are smaller because of the tree roots stealing the available nutrients from it, or it could be both. Both situations have led to the smaller foliage. But again, it is not doing bad. So again, the point of what I was trying to say is that this plant can be adaptable once it is established in your garden. The next gardening pearl is that it is better to plant this plant as a specimen plant or as a focal plant. The reason that is because this plant is very structural. It retains its umbrella shape always. So as you can see, there's an umbrella shape right here. There's also umbrella shape right here. And when it does bloom, it's going to be very spectacular. So it needs to be a plant that stands out in your garden. So in my case here, this plant is the only standout plant around this general area. And when I am in the kitchen, I could look over this way and would actually see the blooms, the actual blooms, because they're whitish looking, and they, even though they turn downward, what I see from inside the house are white, just kind of like ornaments sticking down. Now, if you have two plants, I think it will be better for you, if possible, to plant each one in separate areas of your garden, so each one will stand out in that space. You can also do this if you would like both of them around the same general area. You can plant one here and one on the other side to announce an entryway or an exit, and it will be very beautiful and very spectacular in that way as well. Now, if you have three, you can plant them in a mass, like in a circle kind of way, and that will be so spectacular. Now, know that they can get anywhere from 7 to 10 feet tall and wide. So make sure you leave plenty of space for each one to grow really beautifully. And now we come to the last gardening pearl, and that is, make sure that this plant has a nice backdrop all around it. What that means is when it does bloom, the blooms are going to look spectacular. But the thing is, when it does bloom, it's in the winter. Some of your plants are not awake yet. They're still sleeping. They look brown. So your plant may not stand out as much if that's the case. So the best thing to do, if you can, plant it with the surrounding plants that are evergreens, or you can have a nice hardscape background. Now the blooms are, I would say, yellowish orange in color. So find something that could complement the plant, the blooms really well. I would say evergreens work really well, like conifers work really well. If you can fit this plant with a nice conifer backdrop, or you could have like a darker in color hardscape, something that will make the bloom stand out. Now, where I have this plant in my garden, it does not stand out very well, especially when I am trying to photograph it. The reason for that is that a lot of the plants here are still dormant, so all you see is basically brown. And I'm trying to plant some evergreens here to kind of help with it. So what I do to make the bloom stand out usually is to get low on the ground and then shoot the plant from below, so all you see as a backdrop would be the sky. So if you have the same issue as I do, that's what you probably have to do to make it stand out in a photograph. So if you want a nice backdrop for your EDGEWORTHIA, I would recommend planting it somewhere where you have evergreen plants, or you have a nice hardscape in the background. If you love EDGEWORTHIA and would like to grow it, and if you live in zone 7 to 10, you can grow it. But if you live in zone 6, it needs some winter protection. As far as the soil condition goes, it prefers moist, rich, well-draining soil. It likes part sun or part shade. If you live in the south, it does want some afternoon protection. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. And until the next one, take care and bye for now.